Now you tell me resistance is futile. You think I'll serve you till my last breath. But fucketh with me and I'll fucketh with you. That's why they call me the Black Death. So all I got to say to you, wine-sipping, bull-whipping bullies so utterly oppressant. When an angry mob is coming for you, what you gonna do? Damn, it feels good to be a peasant.
It is Friday, November the 10th, 2017. This is the Dissident Peasant podcast. I am your host, Jeff the Dissident Peasant. Joining me on today's show, not a damn soul, not a person, just me here, back to basics. Got my production assistant behind me holding the fort down. As always, folks, headquarters is dissidentpeasant.com. You can check all my stuff out there. Mostly just the podcast these days, but if I ever put any other writing out or have announcements, that's where you can find it. If you experience some audience growth, which I'm extremely grateful for, thank you so much if you're tuning in. I can't thank you enough. The service is free of charge for now. On today's show, we're going to talk about Mueller watch. We gotta check in with him and see what he's been up to because he's busy and it's making a certain orange-faced, bloated narcissist incredibly sweaty and nervous. We're also going to talk about sexual misconduct, harassment, rape, predatory behavior, and how all those relate to late-stage capitalism. Trump is abroad right now. He sucks. We're going to try to make fun of him a little bit here on the show today and talk about Puerto Rico a little bit and why is it so fucking hard to figure out how many people have died due to Hurricane Maria. That is some fucked up Orwellian bullshit that we can't even accurately tabulate how many people have died directly and indirectly due to Hurricane Maria. In an advanced democracy in 2017, that should be unacceptable. It is acceptable. Those people are largely of color, and therefore they don't matter as much. But before I get into any of that, I just wanted to note that the Democrats had a fantastic night on election night this week. The Virginia governor's race won by 9 points in an off-year election. It's pretty amazing. A lot of DSA victories around the nation, including that man in Virginia as well, who ran and had no help from the Democratic Party. Because under their metrics, which I looked into, and they were looking for things like how many hours have you spent fundraising, and how many thank you notes even have you sent out to donors, campaign donors, that kind of thing. He wasn't doing any of that stuff. He didn't report on any of that stuff. And so the DNC and the National Democratic Party declined to help him, and he won his seat anyway. Lee Carter is his name. Congratulations to him. As a Democratic Socialist, so congratulations to him and all the Democratic Socialists across the nation. Listening to this or not, in office or not, you guys are great. Keep up the great work. And before I jump into the stories I talked about earlier, I want to note one other thing, just on a personal note. This election victory aside, these are dark times. There's a long road ahead of us. We're going to put this country on the path towards tackling the huge and global problems that plague our society, like income inequality and global climate change. Getting justice for immigrants, people of color, women. It can be easy to get discouraged, and I've struggled with depression since my early teens, so around 20 years now. Sometimes medicated, sometimes not. Been to therapy, haven't been to therapy. Well, not in therapy now, is what I mean. But I've talked to a therapist about stuff in the past. And I think that I've gleaned a little piece of wisdom from my experiences, and it's this: even when you feel that you have every legitimate reason to despair, the Electoral College is bullshit, gerrymandering is bullshit, Voter suppression is bullshit. Fox News is bullshit. It's massive reach into people's homes. Propaganda hurts us. We're up against some pretty powerful forces that will not hesitate to pull the trigger, literally, if it comes to that, against us. And so it can be easy to feel defeated and to have every reason to feel that way before the battle's even fought. I would urge you not to give in to that feeling, even when it is logical, even when it is rational to despair. Don't do it. The reason you shouldn't, there are a few. But a couple of the more important reasons to me are, first of all, you might be wrong. Smart as you are, smart as I am, smart as anyone is, you can always be wrong. It's always possible. Some extremely improbable event could happen, change the entire dynamic of the situation that you're in. And the second reason is because when you give in to despair, you make hopelessness more likely. Like, when you embrace that feeling of powerlessness and you disempower yourself, you make it even less likely that you will get out of the situation that you're in. So even when it feels like it's logical and rational to be depressed and scared and to not want to do this anymore and stop and just give up, tune out, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't give up. There's always hope. There is still hope, and the election results prove that there are more of us than there are of the Republicans, and when we are motivated and we engage our voters, we can get them out. They will deliver for us. And then, of course, it's time for the Democratic Party to deliver for them, but that's a conversation for another day. And just to be clear, if you need to talk to a therapist or a doctor and try some medication or something, please go ahead. I'm not saying, like, just don't give up and don't be depressed. Tough it up. As far as, like, a clinical condition, it's medical, and you should see a medical professional about it if you can. But in terms of just your political outlook, feeling depressed and hopeless about the future, I would urge you not to give in to that feeling. That's all. Okay, there's nothing the internet loves more than some white straight dudes take on the sexual misconduct of primarily men, though women sometimes engage in this behavior. Ooh, a lot of names. So there's Weinstein, Roy Moore, stuff came out today, Kevin Spacey, Brett Ratner, and don't forget the current occupant of the office of President of these United States. All have been accused of sexual misconduct of various kinds. Weinstein's news is old, but involved masturbation and coercion. Roy Moore, stuff just came out today. Apparently, there's a lot of good evidence that he plied young women with alcohol when they were not of the legal drinking age, as well as engaged in sexual conduct with a 14-year-old while he was a young man, an adult, however. So, what do I have to say about this that I can say better than anyone else? Not much, probably, but I'll give it a shot. I want to talk about something that I see a lot, and I'm going to be careful here because I'm going to preface this by saying that I find feminist studies and gender studies to be fine and useful and good. People should study that stuff. It's important. It's valuable. I'm all about it. I am also pro-education in terms of teaching young men particularly, but all people, about consent, what it means, why it's important, why you must have it according to the law, what rape is, how to protect yourself against it, that sort of thing. Education all around, I am in favor of that. But this is going to be a limited solution to the problem. It would be a condition that is necessary but not sufficient, we would say, in discrete math. So it is necessary to talk about that stuff, talk about toxic masculinity, talk about glorification of violence in the culture, and how movies and TV shows often present sex as a reward to male protagonists. But, you know, even if we did a really great job of that and we investigated every subject of our allegation of misconduct in this country as well, and we went real gung-ho on that, we would still have a pretty big problem with sexual abuse and misconduct in this country. And the reason we would still have a really big problem with it is because of hierarchical capitalism. What most, but not all, of these incidents have been pouring out over the past few weeks of powerful men primarily, but some women, have been stories of people who hold power, often very explicit capitalist power, over their subjects. They can control whether or not they get work in the future. They can control whether or not they stay employed or get blacklisted. It is the fact that the worker has no power in the workplace anymore that makes the worker so vulnerable to this. Coincidentally, it also makes the worker vulnerable to a lot of other abuses, because any problem where the law is not going to be a sufficient deterrent and the state has no plans to take any proactive steps to protect your rights, the only avenue left is to hire a lawyer. And as pro-lawyer as I am, that's a slow and cumbersome process, and it's also going to be limited to people with means. And if you're a poor peasant like myself, or you're working some crappy service industry job, or even if you have a quote-unquote middle-class job, those jobs don't pay as well as they used to, and it's expensive to raise families. So, hiring that lawyer and pursuing justice is not going to be in reach for you. I don't mean to get off topic. The point is that this solution will be helped by increasing worker power in the workplace. What that looks like medium to long term, I'm not sure. If it looks like workers' councils or elections for boss, and I'm serious, as funny as that sounds, that's the kind of stuff that we will need. But in the short term, it's going to look like people unionizing and the union pushing back on this stuff. I know unions aren't perfect, and a lot of times they can make moves to protect the harasser instead of the harassee, but you know, by and large, these unions are going to be one of the only bulwarks against this kind of behavior on the ground in the workplace. And so they need strengthening, and we need more of them, frankly. One of the topics I got tooling around in my head is what should be Democratic priorities if and when they take back power. And the two big ones for me are global climate change, tackling that with a legit Green New Deal, and also card check. We need card check in this country. Card check, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, it's a system proposed that the way it would work would be you just pass out cards at your workplace. Everyone would check a box. You want a union or not? If you win enough yeses, you get a union. Boom. Recognized. It's that easy. Instead of this crazy, long, drawn-out rigmarole process that we have now where Walmart spends tens of millions, hundreds of millions maybe, of dollars on anti-union propaganda. There's a reason they have to do that. People want a union. Most of them do. The problem is not that they need educating on this. They need empowering. And that empowering will do a lot to protect women and men from sexual harassment by their superiors or their superiors' superiors or people within their company at nonetheless a higher level in different departments maybe. So I just want to make the point that, as important as talking about toxic masculinity and the patriarchy even is, that's somewhat beyond my depth, so I won't comment on it, but I just want to make the point that it's never going to be the end-all solution to this. What we need are worker power. What we need is worker power. That's what's keeping this from getting fixed, in addition to a lack of education. Okay, folks, it's time for some Mueller Watch. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, America's most famous lawman, still at it. Of course, if you're listening to this, you probably know Trump's guilty. It's obviously he's guilty. Look at him, just the way he acts. He is totally guilty. But as reported, I guess a week and a half ago or so now, 3 indictments have become public. They are for George Papadopoulos. Come on down, buddy. Actually, you pled guilty back in July. We just didn't know that. Of lying to the FBI, huh? Paul Manafort, you are also on the hot list here. We all knew that you were probably going down soon, and you have been indicted. Manafort has not pled. And finally, we have Rick Gates, Paul Manafort's deputy at the Trump campaign. Paul Manafort and Gates were charged with violating federal money laundering, foreign lobbying, and banking laws for behavior occurring as far back as 2012. Mueller's mandate, by the way, is to investigate, quote, links and or coordination between the Russian government and individuals associated with the campaign of President Donald Trump, end quote, plus any matters that arise from that inquiry, according to a May letter from the Deputy Attorney General, which I take to mean that if you come across any really obvious money laundering while you're looking into this stuff, Bob Mueller, don't turn your nose up at it. We want to know about that too. We know Trump and his cronies are pretty sloppy. They've been pretty sloppy. Trump basically committed obstruction of justice in public when he fired James Comey and bragged about the reason why. So all this is really more of a formality than anything. It's just a matter of like which crimes are we going to actually prove and charge people with. But it's obvious that it's a pack of thieves that have taken over the executive branch. In any case, Trump is starting to sweat about this. There might not have been any quote-unquote collusion, whatever that is, because collusion is not a legal term. But what is a legal term is campaign finance law, right? And so while we might have extremely few campaign finance laws still followed in this country, one campaign finance law that we do have is that you cannot take any money or thing of value for your re-election for your election campaign from a foreign government or national. It's one of the few campaign laws we have left after Citizens United gutted our whole meager attempts to regulate money in politics. And of course, everyone's favorite TV interviewee, Carter Page, is running around and looks incredibly nervous all of the time and giving interviews to basically everyone who will have him in front of a camera or a microphone. If you caught my call on the Majority Report, I made a joke that it's almost like he thinks something is going to happen to him if nobody's watching him. And I am joking about that, but only like 80% joking. I'm not trying to be cruel, but he looks incredibly uncomfortable and afraid all of the time when he's on TV, and that probably says a lot about how he's feeling about the Russia probe into his own finances. And as far as I know, even as of this recording, he has still not retained a lawyer. So the point of all this is that you should be on the lookout for Trump to continue to behave even more erratically as this goes on. He's already been hinting very strongly that he wants a war with North Korea. He is overseas these days. We will talk about that story next. But one thing he said while he was in South Korea was that the United States has been taken advantage of and played for rube for years by North Korea, and diplomacy won't solve it. Only one thing will solve it. Which, should scare the shit out of you, frankly, because that's insane. A war in the Korean Peninsula, even if we annihilated the North Koreans, which we are capable of doing in the West, even if we did that, we'd still have massive civilian casualties. Millions, maybe. Hundreds of thousands at least. But if he can't pull that off, and he can't pull off a war with North Korea or Iran, he will fire Bob Mueller. I think he'll try to. I'm starting to think that Trump is so inept and clumsy at this stuff, though, that he may, in his increasing isolation, just miss the boat on it, right? And so, indictments will drop that contain him and his own conduct described therein. Maybe even targeting him, although I'm not sure that they're going to actually indict the sitting president of the United States. That would be insane. I mean, I'm not necessarily sure it would be a bad idea, but it would be insane. And then when he gets scared, he will try to shut down Mueller, but he may miss the boat, and he may have some reports drop before he's able to pull the trigger on it. I think it's important in these scenarios to game out exactly physically what will happen. And as near as I can tell, it would go down something like this: Trump, calls John Kelly in, or picks up the phone and calls his attorney general and just says, "Okay, you're fired, or I want you to fire or direct the deputy attorney general to fire Bob Mueller, and if they refuse, they can tender their resignation and leave, and then the next person down the line, Rosenstein, would be in charge then, and he could say the same thing to Rosenstein, and Rosenstein could tell him to piss off." But eventually, once they get down the line, Bob Mueller will get fired. They'll find some lackey down the order in the Justice Department who will do the president's bidding and fire him, and then, who knows what happens. I think Congress probably hems and haws, and Democrats finally get on board the impeachment train. But I don't actually see impeachment happening in that scenario, and it could be that things just kind of peter out after that on the federal level. Then, of course, Attorney General Scheiderman in New York is sharing notes and cribbing Mueller's paper. So, and as I mentioned before, money laundering is a crime under New York state law, and I'm sure the Justice Department has already found evidence of money laundering because Trump has money laundered. He has done that. It's very obvious. Real estate's really popular for that kind of thing, actually. And they would be fools not to catch him, because it's likely that this Russia business is less James Bond, more Tony Soprano. All right, Mueller, get back to work, man. 3 indictments surely ain't enough. Hey, you, the listener, just curious, what is your most hopeful indictment? Put aside the president, because that's probably not going to happen, but who's the other person you would most like to get sent to jail? Personally, I would love to see Jared Kushner go to jail so that Donald can have date night with Ivanka again. I should add that Trump's bodyguard, former bodyguard, I suppose now, Keith Schiller, who did work in the White House for a little while, reportedly told the House Intelligence Committee in a closed-door interview earlier this week that someone in Russia offered to send 5 Russian prostitutes to Trump's Moscow hotel room in 2013, but they did not accept. I don't believe him, and I don't believe Trump. PB tape's real. I actually have really little doubt of that. I think that's real. I would put money on that. $300-$400 probably. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Puerto Rico, because it's kind of fallen off the radar a little bit. I want to share with you an article that I was reading today. I'm not going to read it all to you now, basically. It's from Vox, which is still good sometimes. When Trump visited Puerto Rico on October 3rd, he was incredibly proud, creepily so, of the 16 people certified dead from the hurricane, which he said could have been a lot worse. And if that were all the people who died, he would be right. But if you remember from my interview with the Crystal Paco, whose dad apparently works in disaster recovery and emergency management, one thing to remember about a natural disaster like this is that people still get sick. They fall out of their trucks to break their legs, fall out of trees, crack their heads. They get food poisoning. They catch the flu. If they need dialysis, they're still going to need dialysis. If they need insulin, they're still going to need insulin. You know, all the normal things that people with medical conditions have to manage, still have to be managed, and all the accidents that come with just being a human on this planet and being fallible, they happen too. And when 80 to 90% of the island doesn't have power, and something like 30 to 40% doesn't have clean water to drink or bathe in, they may have enough to literally survive, but they don't have enough to support the needs of people who have medical conditions that would have killed them before the invention of electricity and modern sanitation techniques. I was looking to see exactly how many of those kinds of people, in addition to drowning or building collapse or what have you, have died from the hurricane, and apparently the government's not interested in tabulating that number. Some journalists have tried. Apparently there is no textbook way to count deaths from a disaster. But anecdotally, they found, a dozen here, 10 there, 3 there, 4 there, 5 there, reported in different places that were not in the official count. But, all told, it looks like it's climbing up to about 1,000. It's on the high end of the hundreds. People dead, directly or indirectly, from this storm. And that number is likely to continue to climb in the coming days as the island remains mostly without modern infrastructure that just the sheer number of humans on this planet really demands in order to survive and thrive. No one on this planet, depending on their nationality, is more valuable or less valuable than anyone else. And if this natural disaster had struck Haiti, it would be equally important. Struck anywhere, but I focus on this because I may be grasping towards socialism and struggling with what that's really going to mean for the future and how that's different from being a liberal. But one thing that I am sure of is that I want democracy. That's what I want. I want real democracy in my country. The idea that the mandate to govern springs from the bottom up and not from the top down is one of the most fundamental concepts that humans have come up with in terms of our evolution and social structures. And it pains me deeply to see a group of people that are United States citizens in the richest country the face of the earth has ever known, where 3 people, according to a report today, have as much wealth as the bottom 50% of the American population. This is unconscionable that we rule Puerto Rico as a colony, that we don't allow them the same rights and privileges that citizens who reside in a state can be afforded. I'm not sure exactly what the answer is. I'm skeptical of independence being a big help for them. I think statehood would be a much bigger and better way to tackle the problem. It would remove some, if not all, of the inequities with which we treat Puerto Rican citizens today. But I just want to make the point that this isn't democracy. If the people really do rule, there is no way that they would mandate that they suffer and die from things like cholera and dysentery, diseases that we have pretty much wiped out thanks to modern plumbing and sanitation and germ theory. And now those diseases are coming back because our infrastructure has been completely demolished, and the United States government's response is to loan the island money. Literally reminds me of Imperial France and Haiti, where they recognized Haitian independence in exchange for a large amount of money, which the Haitians have no choice but to agree to, but can't pay the money, and so a French bank wisely loans them the money in installments so that they can pay it back to them, and then tax on the interest charges, and then they finance that loan with another loan, and that loan with another loan, and that loan with another loan, and before you know it, half the country's budget's being taken up by interest payments alone. Like, it's that kind of dynamic that we're setting up Puerto Rico for, that we have set up Puerto Rico for with all these loans. We have the money. We have the money. We're the richest country on the planet. We have the money. And these people are worth it. If it's our responsibility to protect and defend the lives and freedom of anyone, it's American citizens. Self-government, that's what this country is all about, or should be all about, and it isn't. So, stay tuned to this spot, and don't forget poor Puerto Rico. And poor peasants over there, man. What's their fault in this? They born in the wrong place? Ridiculous. We don't even give them the vote, really. Not in the same way I have the vote. It's ridiculous. So, if you've been wondering why the physical country seems like slightly less orange and shitty over the past few days, it's because our bloated, orange, fat, disgusting sack of shit of a president is overseas right now. Yeah, he's overseas, covering himself in glory. Hey, let's take a listen to some of that glory covering now.
I will say, if I could just take a piece of the Prime Minister's answer, he will shoot them out of the sky when he completes the purchase of lots of additional military equipment from the United States. He will easily shoot them out of the sky, just like we shot something out of the sky the other day in Saudi Arabia, as you saw.
But that's cool. We'll give him a pass. I mean, nobody's perfect all the time. Let's check out Trump in China. What did he have to say there?
Both the United States and China will have a more prosperous future if we can achieve a level economic playing field. Right now, unfortunately, it is a very one-sided and unfair one. But I don't blame China. After all, who can blame a country for being able to take advantage of another country for the benefit of its citizens? I give China great credit.
Yes, because what is good and right is that the strong should take from the less strong. And how can we blame them for doing that in the interest of their own citizens or their own multinational, multi-trillion-dollar corporations? Seriously, I don't know why the news media is not more freaked out by this. This is bellicose nationalism. This is will to power. This is literally might makes right. This is go to Iraq and take their oil kind of talk. Okay, he's 0 for 2. That's not good. Let's give him one more shot. Let's see what he had to say to the South Korean parliament. I'm sure he didn't do anything as stupid and inane as brag about his own election victory. Did he? Oh, shit.
Like Korea, and since my election exactly 1 year ago today, I celebrate with you.
I hate to interrupt, but is there any subject more uninteresting to the average member of South Korean parliament than Trump's fucking election victory? Sorry.
The United States is going through something of a miracle itself. Our stock market is at an all-time high. Unemployment is at a 17-year low. We are defeating ISIS. We are strengthening our judiciary, including a brilliant Supreme Court justice, and on and on and on. Currently...
Yeah, I'm sure the South Korean parliament was waiting on pins and needles to hear all about the fact that you put forward a name to serve in a judicial office. It's a big accomplishment, and on and on and on indeed. Look, I really don't have a larger point here except to say that America is not the only country that exists. There is an entire world of people out there. They speak different languages and have different priorities, and they're all equal, of course, in terms of humanity to us, and what our president does affects them too. And I just want to say that I'm incredibly embarrassed and ashamed of this man, that he represents me, that he has the seal of my government in front of his podium when he talks. It is disgusting. If Roy Moore has to step aside because he preyed on underage girls, Donald Trump should have to do the same, because he did the same at his Miss Teen USA project. Sorry, world. Sorry our president sucks so bad. Sorry he's so stupid and vain and ugly, too. He's very ugly. He's not charismatic. He's bloated fucking orange narcissist, and he sucks. And I'm sorry. I appreciate you guys taking him off our hands for a while. Hopefully when he comes back, he'll have a nice fat stack of legal documents to comb through. Okay, that's what I got for you today in terms of show. One more note before I go. It was never my intention to make a living doing this, but what the heck? There is a PayPal button at my website, dissidentpeasant.com. Hey Walter, you can go there. For the right side of the page, the support me link. It's called What is the Dissident Peasant? There's a PayPal button there. You can throw a few bucks in. Start a Patreon soon. The goal is to buy a few things, like some software and a lighting kit, and make enough money to where I can stay home and train myself on how to use all this stuff, and maybe do like a real show that is a little less amateur. Okay, I was your host, Jeff the Dissident Peasant. Behind me, chewing on his toy, is my production assistant, Walter. Walter, you want to say hi? Say hi, buddy. Thanks, Walter. That was Walter. I was Jeff. This was the show. And stay dissident, sirs.